This week, Donald Trump announced that the United States will be taking over Gaza and turning it into an American-controlled hub for tourism and business. El Salvador agreed to hold American criminals in their infamous mega prisons. Joe Biden has signed to an LA talent agency. A suspiciously looking square formation was spotted on Mars.
Holy shit. That's crazy. How do they miss that?
Yeah, Joe Rogan entered the chat. And wave goodbye to your nifty little TEMU and Sheen hauls because the United States Postal Service has officially suspended all incoming packages from China. All of them. Oh, and we got so much more. It is a crazy one today, so I will not ask you again. Subscribe to the channel. Don't know if it helps to mention, but it is my birthday on Friday, so that could subscribe for my birthday. But let's get cracking! Okay, how can we not start with this one? Because Donald Trump has literally caused a global meltdown after last night's joint press conference with Benjamin Netanyahu. I don't think anyone in that room could have ever imagined what was about to come out of his mouth, because he announced, seemingly with 100% seriousness, that the United States was going to take control of Gaza. His actual words, Alex, run the short clip. Short clip, Alex. Alex is notorious for playing clips too long. Short clip!
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it.
Now, to say that this shocked the world would be an understatement for various reasons. Now, firstly, the plan that he laid out implied that the 1.8 million Palestinians would move out and be resettled somewhere else. And why I say somewhere is, even though the most likely would be Egypt or Jordan, well, they've said multiple times in the past, they're not taking Palestinians. And then after that hurdle is somehow jumped over, the US would then go into Gaza and be responsible for dismantling the unexploded bombs, leveling out the area, which he called a demolition zone, and then rebuilding it into, quote, the Riviera of the Middle East, full of job opportunities, hotels, restaurants, etc. It would effectively turn Gaza into an American-controlled hub for tourism and business because, and he said this, that he has long-term plans for an ownership position. Now, like everyone else waking up hearing this news, it sounds like almost unreal, But maybe it helps to have a little bit more context because it actually gets crazier the more that he says. So hearing this, it helps to understand how truly destroyed Gaza is right now. Almost 70% of their structures have been destroyed or damaged, 70%, and at least 1 million people will not have homes to return to. Most utilities such as electricity, sewage, water, and communications are not working, and the vast majority of hospitals and schools have been destroyed. So everything you essentially need for a city, or a town at least, gone. The United Nations estimates that around $50 billion will be required to rebuild Gaza. And even in the absolute best case scenario, they reckon that it would take at least a decade. And keep in mind, that's best case scenario. Other reports are way more dire than that. Another UN report from last year said that once a ceasefire is reached, it would take Gaza 350 years just to restore the GDP to its level in 2022. 350 years. What? And here's even the bigger question, Gaza has hardly a functioning government right now, let alone $50 billion to help rebuild. So, who's gonna pay to rebuild? Israel, for obvious reasons, is unlikely. And Egypt and Jordan, well, they don't really have the resources themselves to significantly help out. You could look to other countries like Qatar or Saudi, but even then, $50 billion is incredibly significant. And perhaps, maybe that's where Trump comes into the question. But his announcement goes far beyond just aid to help rebuild. He's using words like take over and own. And when he was asked by journalists who would live there once all of this, hypothetical rebuilding was done, he said, I think the entire world, representatives from all over the world will be there. Palestinians will also live there. Many people will live there. Trying to read a Trump quote word for word is, it's not easy. But on that note, what does the rest of the world think? Well, Netanyahu, of course, loved the idea, calling it a history-changing move, and he is fully on board. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the United States stands ready to lead and make Gaza beautiful again. Meanwhile, Egypt, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia flatly rejected it immediately, saying that it would destabilize the entire region. Hamas called it ridiculous and absurd and said that any ideas of this kind are capable of igniting the region. Advocacy groups groups like CARE are saying that it is a crime against humanity. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib said that it was ethnic cleansing. The UK's position is that there must be a scenario where Palestinians are able to return home. France have opposed the idea and said that the territory should not be controlled by a third party. And while it's hard to represent what all Palestinians think about the situation, one journalist who lives there said, people in Gaza, like in all the world, are deeply connected to the place where they were born, raised, and have been living all their lives. We will stay put on this land even though there is death and destruction. And I mean, even regardless of what everyone thinks about this situation, we haven't even got to the legal implications, because honestly, that's probably the biggest reason why this is so unbelievable. I mean, just the two on the top of my mind: forcibly relocating an entire population and claiming a foreign sovereign territory without any legal basis, both highly illegal under international law. And I'm sure there's dozens more. This is much more than just a controversial foreign policy take. Experts warn that if this goes ahead, it could cause international chaos, extreme legal battles at the highest level, and it would set fire to decades of diplomacy. And in the face of how impossible this plan actually seems to be put into reality, you gotta ask the question, I don't know, how serious actually is Trump about this? And if he is serious, then he's either got to know something that the rest of us don't, or he just doesn't care about how many laws this would be violating. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments and let's move on. Okay, preface for this next story, because I actually recorded it yesterday, and it's ironic that I say it could be one of his craziest announcements yet. But then the next day, he followed it up with Gaza. So, disregard that I had to say that. Okay, let's talk about Donald Trump's most recent announcement, because I'm not even gonna lie, this could be one of his craziest yet. In an alarming and quite frankly unprecedented development, they have just revealed that El Salvador has agreed to house US criminals in their infamous mega prisons, along with illegal migrants of any nationality. America's Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that the deal he struck with El Salvador's president Bukele is, quote, the most unprecedented extraordinary migratory agreement anywhere in the world, and that we can send them and he will put them in his jails. El Salvador's president made it pretty clear this would be for a fee. But I mean, you gotta understand just how truly unprecedented and wild this would be if it actually went ahead. Because not only would the legal implications of sending US citizens, right, that are in prison to another country's prison just be insane, but if you knew anything about El Salvador's mega prisons, you would know this is like one of the last places on planet Earth that you would want to go. And maybe you just need to understand a little background. I've done a video on this back in like 2023. Ever since then, I've been shook. You see, after consistently having not one of, the highest murder rate in the entire world, El Salvador's president declared a national state of emergency in efforts to crack down on the country's rampant gangs, which follow the infamous motto, kill, rape, and control. These gangs had such a stronghold on the country that they even tried to form a parallel state, and establishing positions in justice, policing, and business. For years, they killed and who they liked without consequence, because they were oftentimes better armed than the police. And oftentimes the police would be forced to just let them do what they want because they wouldn't dare enter their territory or else. However, after things got so incredibly bad, and yes, the murder rate highest in the world, they started implementing super extreme laws, including things like being allowed to be arrested without a warrant and removing the right to a lawyer. And the result of this? Well, in just 1 year, a staggering 65,000 suspected gang members were detained. But in order to house that many people, they built a colossal mega prison capable of holding up to 40,000 people. And you gotta understand, for that country, that's insanely big. The United States' biggest one, 20,000 people. And the United States has a population 58 times bigger than El Salvador. But the reason they can hold so many, and be ready for this, because the toilet situation in here is equivalent to torture. They can hold that many because each cell has 100 inmates, but it only contains 80 beds. And all of those beds do not have a mattress. 100 criminals per cell, 80 beds per cell. So if you thought that, the thought of hardened criminals having to spoon was bad enough, well, out of all of that, each cell has only 2 sinks and 2 toilets. 2 toilets for 100 men! And to make it worse, the only time the prisoners are allowed to leave their cells are for legal hearings or to be punished in a dark, windowless cell. Like the previous cell wasn't bad enough. Yeah, pretty brutal. And perhaps that's why El Salvador's homicide rate has plummeted, because it went from the highest in the world in 2015 down to the lowest in all of South America in 2024 at only 1.9 per 100,000. That is incredibly significant in under 10 years. But the thought of US citizens actually being sent there, I highly doubt it. Maybe it's just like a fear tactic at this point. And if there was any effort to actually deport American citizens, you can imagine the legal implications, they're gonna go off. But yeah, what do you think about this? Do you think it's a good idea, send them out there, or not? Moving on. Okay, this image of this, I don't know, square-looking formation on Mars is causing a lot of interest this week. Yeah, even Joe Rogan and Elon said, woo! And you know, when it comes to these sorts of things in space and on Mars, usually they're fake or they're edited, but I can confirm that this one is 100% real. Because if you go to the original source captured on the Mars Orbiter camera, this picture was taken from this tiny slice, as you can see in this crater. Then if you zoom in to the top of that slice here, you find that. Very real. Now, the reason that it's getting so much attention online is that people are pointing out that perfect straight lines don't often exist in nature. And the natural processes that be don't usually create such a large and symmetrical shapes, which also makes it much harder to dismiss as pareidolia. And according to NASA analysis, it's roughly 3 kilometers in length. So we got a big boy. And while that may seem like pretty insane, you know, look at this thing. It does look pretty odd. On the flip side, you know, Mars does have a lot of strange shapes and formations and things. Also, this image was taken in 2001, which weirdly sounds like, oh, 10 years ago. Cool. No, that's 24 years ago. 2001. 24 years ago. What the flip? And then finally, let's be honest, we've been here quite a few times before, haven't we? You know, with the Mars tunnels and the faces on Mars. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Are we looking into this too deep and it's nothing, shoo, get away? Or is this something interesting? Let me know. Moving on. All right, you know what I think it's time for? Rapid fire news. Good old Joe Biden has only been out of office for what, 2 weeks? Yet today we're hearing that he is already signing with a talent agency in LA. Bro, is retirement that bad? 82 years old and you still going, man. I'm out at that point. It's called the Creative Artists Agency, and it's currently representing celebrities like Brad Pitt, Ariana Grande, and now Joe Biden. What is brother doing? Now, while specific plans of what 82-year-old Joe might be dropping, we don't know. But there is speculation that he might be engaging in entertainment-orientated projects, similar to the Obama's Higher Ground production company. I mean, I'm sure whatever Joe might be working on probably dropped before GTA 6. Next! Okay, so remember this clip that went insanely viral of the DC plane and the helicopter collision? Well, the 2 employees that worked for MWAA that allegedly leaked that clip to CNN, well, they have now been arrested. They're accused of making an unauthorized copy of records and are now facing charges of computer trespass. Now, in Washington, computer trespass, as you'd imagine, it is Washington, pretty serious offense. And obviously it does depend on the nature and the severity, but it can lead to significant fines and even imprisonment. Next! Trump has floated the idea of an American sovereign wealth fund buying TikTok. Now, for context, the US currently doesn't have a sovereign wealth fund, but yesterday Trump signed an executive order to create one within the next 12 months. And if you don't know what that is, it's essentially a large pool of money that is owned by a country from things like a surplus of trade profit. And then they take that and they invest it globally on behalf of the government. So they buy things like stocks, bonds, real estate, precious metals, and now Trump even mentioned it could be used to acquire assets like TikTok. Yeah, so I have no idea what that could mean for the ownership, because if it is actually owned by the US government, people will leave en masse. And if people don't, the FYP will just be America. Moving on. Also, another one of Trump's announcements, just everything, all of the news is just about Trump announcing shit that's so wild. He is now demanding that Ukraine give its rare earth minerals to the United States as payment for all of the aid that they have given them. And while immediately people started accusing Trump of, capitalizing on Russia's invasion for material gain, with the German Chancellor Olaf calling the plans selfish, well, Ukrainian media reported that the idea may have actually originated in Ukraine. They apparently see it as an incentive to keep the weapon shipments flowing to the country. Next! According to the Wall Street Journal, the White House is now preparing an executive order to dismantle and defund the Department of Education. They added that the announcement of the details of how it's going to work and, what it would actually be sometime this month. Now, for anyone that doesn't know, the DOE essentially oversees federal funding for schools, enforces federal education laws, and ensures equal access to education. But Trump doesn't really like the federal aspect of this. He claimed that this department has been infiltrated by radical zealots and Marxists, and that educational control should be taken back to individual states. Now, how exactly this would change education in the United States? No one really knows, because the Department of Education was founded in 1979, and the world today looks very different than what it does back then. And then, for our final story of the day, say goodbye to your nifty little TEMU hauls, Amazon hauls, Shein hauls. Because, as of now, the United States Postal Service has officially suspended all incoming parcels from China and Hong Kong. Why, you may ask? Well, blame tariffs. Blame foreign trade policy. Basically, in a nutshell, Trump scrapped the de minimis rule, which let cheap packages under $800 into the United States tax-free. And guess what? Turns out a casual 1.3 billion packages every year were taking that loophole for a goddamn joyride. So now, with this rule scrapped and forcing in stricter duty collection and more thorough custom checks, USPS basically said, this is gonna be an absolute nightmare. So we're just gonna opt out of doing packages entirely. We're out. And yeah, Amazon, Shein, and TEMU, well, they're all scrambling. Because while UPS and FedEx are still operating, their prices are way higher. So if you were loving all of those shifty TEMU free shipping deals, well, that might be over. But hey, maybe this is the universe just telling us to stop buying LED toothpicks and self-stirring mugs because you have a problem. Or maybe it's just the start of another trade war. Who knows? Either way, if you live in the US, get ready for either shipping delays or higher prices. Or neither, because tomorrow everything can change. That's pretty much how things go in 2025. But with that being said, I'm gonna love you. I'm gonna leave you. Not for long though, because I'll be back hopefully before my birthday. Subscribe for my birthday. Did I mention that it was my birthday? It's gonna be my birthday on Friday, so you should subscribe. Anyway, I'll see you in a couple of days. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like it, comment. Woo! And finally, yeah, even Joe Rogan and Elon said, woo! They fucking didn't, whatever. I don't even give a shit. I did forget to have the naughty little people on the wall to prepare, write them down and stuff. So I'm going to whip the wall. And Alex, you just put whoever or whatever you think deserves a whipping. And I guess we'll find out who gets whipped then. Subscribe to the channel or become like them. And you don't want to.